The trial took 6 weeks, but it took less than 4 hours for the jury to find Dr. George Nicopolis innocent of overprescribing addictive drugs to Elvis Presley, singer Jerry Lee Lewis, and 7 others.
After 50 years of silence, scientists have finally opened the tomb of Elvis Presley, and what they found changes everything we thought we knew. Inside, new medical samples, preserved documents, and never-before-seen items are helping experts discover what truly caused his death. Many long-held beliefs are now being questioned, especially concerning the substances he was prescribed and the real health problems he battled before he passed away. This new footage reveals hidden truths about his final days and personal struggles that fans never saw. What did the test prove? What secret was finally uncovered? Join us as we reveal the answers. What led to the tomb opening? The decision to open Elvis Presley's tomb did not happen overnight. It came after decades of whispers, doubts, and unanswered questions that refused to fade away. For 50 years, the world believed one story about how the king of rock and roll passed away. But behind closed doors, something else was brewing. It all started when a private medical archive was reopened during a routine legal review. Inside dusty boxes and forgotten files, investigators found something disturbing. Prescription documents linked to Elvis had been tampered with. Names were crossed out and rewritten. Dates looked suspicious. The signatures seemed questionable. These were not just old papers. They were evidence of something hidden for half a century. One name kept appearing over and over again: Dr. George C. Nicopolis. The fans knew him as Dr. Nick. He was Elvis's personal physician during the final years. For decades, people accused him of giving Elvis too many pills. But these new documents revealed something worse. Prescriptions were being written under fake names. Other people's identities were used to hide the massive amounts of medication flowing to Elvis. The system was designed to cover tracks and avoid suspicion. When this information leaked to the public, shockwaves spread across the world. Elvis fans who had mourned him for 50 years suddenly felt betrayed. How could this have been hidden for so long? What really happened in those final days? Was the official story even true? Family members faced enormous pressure. Legal teams gathered. Medical experts demanded access. News reporters camped outside Graceland day and night. Protesters held signs asking for justice and truth. The pressure became too much to ignore. Finally, after months of debate and legal battles, the family agreed. Scientists would be allowed to open the tomb. They would examine the remains. They would run DNA tests. They would search for the real cause of death. The goal was clear and shocking. After 50 years of believing one story, the world would finally learn what actually took Elvis Presley's life. Was it really heart failure caused by obesity and substance misuse? Or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? As the investigation moved forward, more disturbing details emerged. Medical. Records showed that Elvis had been taking extraordinary amounts of medication in his final months. Pain relievers, sleeping pills, stimulants, and sedatives filled his daily routine. His body had become dependent on these substances. His organs were struggling under the chemical burden. But the most troubling discovery was how these medications were obtained. The altered prescriptions proved that someone was deliberately hiding the truth. Someone wanted to make it look like Elvis was receiving normal medical care when reality painted a very different picture. The public demanded answers. Fans who had loved Elvis for generations refused to accept the old explanations anymore. They wanted scientific proof. They wanted DNA verification. They wanted the truth about what destroyed their beloved icon. So the tomb was prepared for opening. Security surrounded Graceland. Medical teams assembled with their equipment. Forensic specialists arrived with testing kits. Legal observers documented every step. Cameras recorded the historic moment. The world held its breath as the seals were broken. After 50 years of silence, Elvis Presley's tomb would reveal its secrets. The investigation that followed would shock everyone who thought they knew the real story. What they found inside would change everything people believed about that tragic day in August 1977. What was found inside the tomb? When the heavy stone seals finally lifted, a cold rush of preserved air escaped into the room. Scientists wearing protective gear stepped forward carefully. Cameras documented every single moment. What they discovered inside would shake the foundations of everything the world believed about Elvis Presley's death. The tomb had remained sealed for 50 years. Inside, his remains lay in remarkable preservation due to the controlled environment. But it was not the physical state that shocked the investigators. It was what the body revealed about his final months of life. The skeletal remains told a devastating story. Bone samples showed signs of severe degradation that could only come from one source: long-term medication misuse. The calcium density was abnormally low. Certain joints displayed deterioration patterns matching chronic substance dependency. These were not the bones of someone who passed away from simple heart failure. When researchers examined the organ tissues that remained, they found even more disturbing evidence. The heart showed signs of profound deterioration. The liver displayed damage consistent with processing toxic substances over extended periods. The kidneys revealed stress patterns that indicated years of chemical overload. Every organ told the same heartbreaking tale, but the real breakthrough came from tissue analysis. Using advanced forensic technology not available in 1977, scientists extracted preserved cellular material. They tested it for chemical traces. What they found sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Synthetic opioid compounds were still detectable in the skeletal tissue. These were not street substances. They were prescription medications. Powerful pain relievers that had been prescribed legally, but used in catastrophic quantities. The levels were staggering. They indicated daily consumption far beyond any safe medical guidelines. Hair fiber samples told an even more detailed story. Hair preserves chemical history like rings in a tree trunk. By analyzing different sections, scientists could track Elvis's medication intake month by month. The pattern was terrifying. The substance levels climbed steadily higher as 1977 progressed. By August, his body was saturated with multiple overlapping medications. Investigators also found physical items sealed inside the tomb. Small boxes containing prescription pills sat near the casket. These were medications Elvis had with him during his final days. Laboratory analysis identified 17 different substances: pain relievers, sleeping aids, stimulants, sedatives, and medications for various conditions. Taken together, they created a chemical cocktail that no human body could safely process. Among the personal items was a diamond-studded ring Elvis had worn on stage countless times. It sparkled under the forensic lights, a reminder of the brilliant performer who had captured hearts worldwide. But it also served as a tragic symbol. All the fame and wealth could not save him from the medical dependency that slowly destroyed him. Scientists found fragments of specialized throat medication. Elvis had struggled with vocal problems in his later years. The pressure to perform despite declining health had led to more prescriptions, more pills, more chemical solutions to physical problems that needed rest and recovery instead. The DNA testing provided the final devastating conclusion. Elvis Presley did not pass away from recreational substance overdose. He did not pass away because he sought out illegal substances or wanted to harm himself. He passed away because a trusted physician provided continuous prescription medications that created fatal dependency. How? The addiction started. The tragedy of Elvis Presley did not begin with pills in a bottle. It began with pain. Real, physical, unbearable pain that started long before anyone suspected something was wrong. Understanding how the addiction took hold requires going back to the beginning, to the moment when Elvis was still young, vibrant, and full of unstoppable energy. Elvis performed like no one before him. His stage presence was electric. He moved with wild intensity that drove audiences into frenzy. But those movements came with a price. Every twist, every jump, every drop to his knees created stress on his body. His spine absorbed the impact night after night. His knees took punishment from the constant motion. His muscles strained beyond normal limits. By the early 1960s, Elvis started experiencing chronic back pain. It was not an occasional discomfort. It was persistent agony that made simple daily activities difficult. The pain radiated down his spine and into his legs. Some mornings he struggled just to stand upright. But stopping was never an option. The show had to go on. His knees developed problems from years of stage choreography. The signature moves fans loved were destroying his joints slowly. Inflammation became constant. Walking became painful. Performing became torture. Yet he smiled through every show, never letting the audience see his suffering. Then came the vocal strain. Elvis pushed his voice to incredible limits. Recording sessions lasted hours. Concert performances demanded powerful delivery night after night. His throat developed irritation that turned into chronic inflammation. Speaking hurts. Singing hurts even more. But silence meant disappointing millions of fans who waited to hear him. The pressure mounted from every direction. His weight fluctuated wildly as stress and schedule chaos disrupted normal eating patterns. Sometimes he gained weight rapidly. Other times he lost it just as fast. The constant changes put additional stress on his already suffering body. Sleep became impossible. The combination of physical pain, performance anxiety, and exhausting schedule created severe insomnia. Elvis would lie awake for hours, his mind racing, his body aching. Exhaustion piled upon exhaustion until he could barely function. Emotional breakdowns followed. The pressure of being Elvis Presley crushed down on him daily. Everyone wanted something. Everyone needed him. Everyone expected perfection. The loneliness of fame mixed with physical suffering created psychological torment that few could understand. Behind all this suffering stood one man, Colonel Tom Parker. He was Elvis's manager, but his priorities were clear. Money came first. Always. Parker booked concerts without considering Elvis's health. He scheduled filming back-to-back without rest periods. He signed contracts that trapped Elvis in obligations that could not be broken. Parker viewed Elvis as a product, not a person. When Elvis complained about pain or exhaustion, Parker reminded him about the money, the fans, the contracts. There was always another show, another film, another appearance. Rest was not part of the business plan. The concert schedule reached insane levels. Some months Elvis performed nearly every single night. He traveled constantly, sleeping on planes and in hotel rooms. His body never had time to heal from one performance before the next one began. Film contracts demanded long shooting days. Studios wanted their money's worth. Elvis stood under hot lights for hours, repeating scenes endlessly. Between takes, he collapsed in his dressing room, desperate for relief. Media appearances added another layer of pressure. Interviews, photo sessions, promotional events filled any remaining free time. Elvis was never allowed to simply be human. He had to be the king every moment of every day. As the pain worsened, Elvis turned to doctors for help. They listened to his complaints. They saw his suffering, and they did what doctors do. They wrote prescriptions, mild pain relievers at first, pills that seemed harmless, medicine that promised relief without consequences. The pills worked initially. Elvis could perform again without wincing. He could sleep for a few hours. He could face another grueling day. So when the pain returned, he went back to the doctors. They increased the dosage. Stronger medications replaced the mild ones. The prescriptions grew longer and more complex. Year after year, the pattern continued. Pain led to pills. Pills led to tolerance. Tolerance led to stronger pills. Nobody stopped to ask the dangerous question. What happens when the medicine becomes worse than the disease? By the time anyone realized what was happening, Elvis was already trapped in a cycle he could not escape. The final admission. The moment Elvis realized he was addicted remains one of the most heartbreaking chapters of his story. It did not happen suddenly. Understanding crept in slowly, like darkness falling over a stage after the final curtain. By the time he fully grasped what had happened to him, escape seemed impossible. Medical records that surfaced during the tomb investigation revealed something the public never knew. Elvis had been admitted multiple times to private facilities for treatment. These were not public hospitals where photographers could catch him. They were exclusive clinics where celebrities could seek help away from prying eyes. During these admissions, doctors tried to reduce his medication levels. They knew he was dependent. They understood the danger. They attempted to create plans for gradual reduction, but every attempt hit the same terrible wall. When Elvis tried to cut back on his prescriptions, his body rebelled violently. Within hours of reducing doses, tremors began. His hands shook uncontrollably. His legs felt weak and unstable. Simple tasks like holding a glass of water became nearly impossible. The fatigue that followed was unlike normal tiredness. It was a complete physical collapse. Elvis would sleep for hours and wake up feeling even more exhausted. His energy disappeared completely. Getting out of bed required enormous effort. Walking across a room felt like climbing a mountain. Sharp nerve spasms attacked without warning. Sudden jolts of pain shot through his body. His muscles seized up unexpectedly. The agony was worse than the original pain that started the medication in the first place. His nervous system had become so dependent on the chemicals that it could not function normally without them. Sleep collapsed entirely during reduction attempts. The insomnia that had plagued him before became absolute torture. Elvis would lie awake for days, his mind racing, his body screaming for the medication it had learned to need. The exhaustion mixed with pain created a nightmare state where rest became impossible. Medical staff watched helplessly as each reduction attempt failed. They documented the withdrawal symptoms carefully. They tried different approaches and alternative medications, but nothing worked. Elvis's body had changed at a fundamental level. The dependency had rewoven his entire nervous system around the presence of these substances. The pressure to perform never stopped during these struggles. Colonel Parker did not care about medical treatment or withdrawal symptoms. Concert contracts had been signed. Money had been promised. Fans had bought tickets. Elvis had to perform regardless of his condition. So the terrible choice presented itself repeatedly. Suffer through withdrawal and fail to meet obligations, or take the medication and continue functioning. For someone whose entire identity centered on being a performer, on not disappointing his fans, the choice seemed obvious, even though it was deadly. Prescriptions increased again after each failed reduction attempt. The doses grew stronger because Elvis's tolerance had increased. His body needed more of the chemicals just to achieve the same effect. What had started as pain relief had transformed into pure survival. The medication was no longer about feeling good or getting high. It was about avoiding the torture of withdrawal. The pills that were supposed to heal him had become the only thing keeping him alive, even as they slowly ended him. The addiction was not his choice or his fault. It was the inevitable result of years of pain, pressure, and prescriptions that should never have been written. The personal life breakdown. While the world saw Elvis Presley as the king of rock and roll, behind closed doors his personal life was crumbling into pieces. The pain medications and exhausting schedule were not the only things destroying him. His heart was breaking in ways that no pill could ever fix. At the center of everything was Priscilla Presley. Their love story had once seemed like a fairy tale. They met when Priscilla was just 14 years old, living in Germany where Elvis was stationed during his military service. He was immediately captivated by her beauty and innocence. She was drawn to his charm and kindness. Their early relationship held genuine magic. Elvis was protective of Priscilla in ways that surprised everyone around him. He treated her with respect and tenderness. He wrote her letters filled with dreams about their future together. He envisioned a complete family life with children, stability, and lasting happiness. When Priscilla finally moved to Graceland, Elvis promised her parents he would take care of her, and for a time, he did. They married in 1967 in a beautiful ceremony in Las Vegas. Their daughter Lisa Marie arrived exactly 9 months later. For a brief moment, everything seemed perfect. But fame is a destroyer of ordinary happiness. The pressures that crushed Elvis professionally began infecting his personal life. The constant touring meant he was rarely home. When he was home, he was exhausted beyond measure. The medications that helped him perform turned him into someone Priscilla barely recognized. Elvis became absent, even when he was physically present. He would sit in rooms for hours, staring at nothing, lost inside his own medicated fog. Conversations became difficult. He forgot things they had discussed. His moods swung unpredictably from affectionate to withdrawn. Priscilla felt herself becoming invisible. She was married to the most famous man in the world, yet she felt completely alone. She tried to reach him, to pull him back from whatever darkness was consuming him. But the medications and depression had built walls she could not break through. The emotional distance grew wider with each passing month. Elvis was trapped in his cycle of pain, pills, and performances. Priscilla was trapped in a marriage that had become a prison of loneliness. She was young, beautiful, and desperate for connection that Elvis could no longer provide. Her attempts to find attention elsewhere began innocently. Social events, dance classes, activities that gave her life outside the suffocating atmosphere of Graceland. But loneliness is a dangerous companion. What started as innocent distraction evolved into something more complicated. When Elvis discovered that Priscilla had developed feelings for someone else, something inside him shattered completely. The betrayal hit him harder than any physical pain ever could. He internalized it as proof of his own worthlessness. If even Priscilla could not love him anymore, what value did he have? Their separation became public knowledge in 1972. The media circus that followed was brutal. Photographers captured Elvis looking devastated. Newspapers speculated about affairs and blame. Fans took sides. The privacy Elvis desperately needed disappeared entirely. Public criticism poured in from every direction. Some blamed Priscilla for abandoning him. Others blamed Elvis for his lifestyle choices. The truth was far more complicated than anyone outside could understand. Two people who genuinely loved each other had been destroyed by circumstances neither could control. Elvis experienced jealousy that consumed him. He would ask friends obsessively about Priscilla. He wanted to know where she went, who she saw, whether she was happy. The questions revealed a man tormented by loss and regret. His emotional withdrawal became complete after the separation. Friends noticed he stopped talking about the future. He stopped making long-term plans. He performed his concerts mechanically, going through motions without real passion. The spark that made him special was dying. Speculation about betrayal followed Elvis everywhere. People whispered that Priscilla had affairs during the marriage. Others claimed Elvis had been unfaithful first. The rumors multiplied and twisted until nobody knew what was true anymore. Elvis heard all of it and believed the worst versions. What people closest to Elvis confirmed later was heartbreaking. He loved Priscilla more deeply than he had ever loved anyone. She was not just his wife. She was his dream of normalcy, his hope for happiness beyond fame. Losing her felt like losing his last connection to being human, rather than being Elvis Presley the product. The emotional damage from the marriage breakdown contributed enormously to his depression. The pills that were supposed to help him cope instead made everything worse. He became more isolated, more dependent, more hopeless. His personal life had collapsed, and he had no tools to rebuild it. The pain in his heart proved far more destructive than the pain in his body ever was. The final days. The last weeks of Elvis Presley's life were a nightmare that everyone around him witnessed, but no one could stop. By August of 1977, his body was sending desperate signals that the end was approaching, but the machine of fame kept grinding forward, dragging him along even as he crumbled. Witnesses close to Elvis during those final days described a man in agony. Severe stomach pains plagued him constantly. His digestive system had been ravaged by years of medication. Every meal brought discomfort. Sometimes the pain was so intense he would double over, clutching his abdomen and struggling to breathe. Sleep had become completely impossible. Not just difficult, but utterly beyond reach. Elvis would lie in bed for hours with his eyes open, his mind racing, his body exhausted but unable to rest. The insomnia stretched for days at a time. His brain fog thickened. Reality and confusion blended together. The fatigue went far beyond normal tiredness. Elvis could barely walk from one room to another without needing to sit down. Climbing stairs left him breathless and shaking. His energy had vanished so completely that even speaking required enormous effort. Friends watched him struggle through simple conversations, losing his train of thought mid-sentence. His body showed visible signs of catastrophic failure. Swelling appeared in his face, hands, and ankles. His features looked puffy and distorted. His rings no longer fit his swollen fingers. His clothes hung strangely on a body that was simultaneously gaining weight and wasting away. The swelling indicated that his organs were failing to process fluids properly. Perhaps most disturbing was the emotional shutdown. Elvis had always been expressive, passionate, full of feeling. But in those final weeks, something inside him turned off. His eyes looked empty. His responses became mechanical. He smiled when expected, but the smiles reached nowhere near his heart. Friends tried desperately to get through to him. They begged him to rest, to cancel shows, to seek real medical help. Elvis would nod and agree, then do nothing. He seemed trapped in a fog where urgent warnings could not penetrate. The medications had dulled not just his pain, but his survival instincts. Yet Colonel Parker continued demanding appearances. A tour was scheduled. Contracts had been signed. Money was waiting. Parker did not care that Elvis could barely stand. The show had to go on because the profits had to keep flowing. Parker's cold business calculations ignored the dying man in front of him. The doctors surrounding Elvis continued their deadly work. They saw his condition deteriorating. They witnessed the swelling, the exhaustion, the obvious signs of system failure. But instead of stopping the medications, they adjusted dosages and added new prescriptions. The medical negligence reached its horrifying peak. Elvis kept performing because he did not know how to stop. Being Elvis Presley was all he knew. Disappointing fans felt worse than physical death. So he dragged himself on stage, his body screaming in protest, his mind clouded by chemicals, his heart struggling to keep beating. His final concert took place in Indianapolis on June 26, 1977. Footage from that performance shows a man barely holding himself together. His movements were sluggish. His voice cracked and wavered. He forgot lyrics to songs he had sung thousands of times. The audience cheered anyway, not understanding they were watching goodbye. Back at Graceland, Elvis tried to maintain some normalcy. He spent time with Lisa Marie when she visited. He talked with friends. He made plans for future projects he would never complete. Part of him knew the end was close, but another part refused to accept it. His girlfriend, Ginger Alden, stayed with him during those final days. She watched him pace at night, unable to sleep. She heard him complain about pain. She saw him take handful after handful of pills. She grew increasingly frightened but did not know what to do. On August 15th, Elvis seemed more agitated than usual. He could not settle down. He tried to read but could not focus. He attempted to sleep, but his body refused. The medications were no longer working properly. His tolerance had grown so high that normal doses did nothing. In the early morning hours of August 16th, Elvis went into his bathroom. He took more medication, desperately seeking relief that would not come. His body had reached its absolute limit. The heart that had pounded through thousands of performances could not beat anymore. When Ginger found him collapsed on the bathroom floor that afternoon, it was already too late. The king of rock and roll had finally stopped fighting. His body had surrendered to years of misuse it never deserved. August 16, 1977 became the day the music ended. But the truth about why he passed away remained buried for 50 more years. What the discovery means today. The reopening of Elvis Presley's tomb represents far more than a medical investigation. It stands as a historical reckoning that rewrites 50 years of misunderstanding, blame, and false narratives. What scientists discovered inside the sealed tomb changes everything the world believed about one of the most famous deaths in entertainment history. For half a century, Elvis was remembered by many as a cautionary tale. A man who had everything and threw it away. A talented performer who destroyed himself through weakness and excess. The dominant narrative painted him as someone who chose substances over responsibility, who preferred escape over facing reality. That narrative was always incomplete, but now it has been proven completely wrong. The forensic evidence, DNA analysis, and medical documentation tell a different story entirely. Elvis did not destroy himself. He was destroyed by a system that should have protected him. The findings challenge every assumption people made about his death. When news first broke in 1977 that Elvis passed away at 42 years old, most assumed substance overdose. The whispers started immediately. He was an addict. He could not control himself. He brought it on himself. These judgments followed his memory for decades. But the tomb investigation restored the truth to his suffering. The evidence proved that Elvis was following medical prescriptions. He was not seeking highs or thrills. He was trying to manage legitimate pain so he could continue working. Every pill he took had been prescribed by a licensed physician. He trusted the medical system to help him, and that trust ended him. The discovery exposes medical negligence on a stunning scale. Dr. George Nicopolis faces renewed scrutiny even though he is no longer alive to defend himself. The altered prescriptions, the fake names, the excessive quantities all point to deliberate concealment. Dr. Nick knew what he was doing was dangerous, yet he continued anyway. Lisa Marie Presley spent her entire life carrying the weight of her father's reputation. Before her own death, she spoke often about wanting people to understand the real Elvis. This investigation finally gives the world that understanding. Her children and grandchildren now inherit a legacy cleared of false blame. The truth also honors Elvis by showing his strength rather than his weakness. He performed until his body literally could not continue. He fought through pain that would have stopped most people years earlier. He gave everything to his art and his fans. That dedication deserves recognition, not judgment. 50 years after his death, Elvis Presley can finally rest with the truth known. He was not a cautionary tale about excess. He was a victim of medical betrayal. And that distinction changes everything about how history remembers the king. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.